I found out my company card had stopped working while I was standing at a hotel front desk in Jakarta, soaked in sweat, my passport in one hand, my phone in the other, and a line of tired business travelers forming behind me like a silent jury. The receptionist slid the terminal back across the counter and gave me that practiced, apologetic smile that means this problem is now entirely yours. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said. "The authorization has been revoked." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something else. Authorization revoked. Not declined, not delayed. Revoked. That was the moment I understood something important. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional, and whoever did it had done the math assuming I wouldn't survive long enough to fight back. 3 days earlier, I'd been sitting in seat 3A on a red-eye flight from Frankfurt, reviewing vendor transition spreadsheets on my laptop while most of the cabin slept. Jakarta was stop number 4 on a trip that had already stretched across 2 continents, all because our largest Southeast Asian infrastructure partner was threatening to walk unless someone with actual authority showed up in person. That someone was me. I wasn't senior leadership. I wasn't flashy. But for 11 years, whenever a contract started wobbling overseas, currency volatility, compliance gaps, local labor laws, corruption red flags, someone eventually said, "Get Daniel on a plane." I was the fixer, the invisible one, the guy who knew which clauses mattered when everything else fell apart. Which is why, when my card stopped working in Jakarta, it wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. I joined Helixon Systems straight out of graduate school. Enterprise logistics and infrastructure software. Unsexy, complex, and deeply dependent on long-term trust. The kind of business where relationships mattered more than branding. I built my career quietly. I learned how procurement actually worked when borders were involved. Customs rules, currency hedging, local labor laws, corruption red flags. I became certified in corporate travel compliance, not because it was glamorous, but because I hated chaos. Paperwork calmed me. If something went wrong overseas, documentation was the difference between inconvenience and catastrophe. For a decade, that mindset served me well. Then Karen Whitlock arrived. Karen's first email went out at 4:57 p.m. on a Friday. That detail matters. Everyone in the company knew the rule. Anything sent after 4:30 on a Friday wasn't meant to be discussed. It was meant to be absorbed, quietly, without pushback. The subject line read, "Global Travel Optimization Policy, effective immediately." I opened it from my kitchen table, laptop balanced next to a half-eaten sandwich, already sensing trouble. Karen loved the word optimization. She used it the way other executives used culture. It sounded neutral, scientific, unarguable. The email itself was 3 pages long, dense, clinical, written in the language of someone who believed numbers were more honest than people. Most of it was predictable. Tighter thresholds, preferred vendors, stricter documentation. Then I hit the clause that made my jaw tighten. All travel expenses exceeding local government per diem rates must receive pre-authorization from operations. I read it twice, then a third time, because I knew that at least 12 countries we operated in didn't publish reliable per diem benchmarks, and I also knew that many international hotels required advance payment, exceeding per diem thresholds due to local regulations. This wasn't optimization, this was a trap. I drafted a response carefully. No emotion, just facts. "Hi, Karen. Flagging a potential implementation issue with the per diem pre-authorization clause. Several regions, e.g. Indonesia, Vietnam, and parts of West Africa, lack standardized or reliable per diem benchmarks. Additionally, many hotels require advance payment exceeding per diem thresholds due to local regulations. Happy to discuss guardrails that preserve compliance while maintaining operational viability. Best, Daniel." Her reply came 12 minutes later. "We expect our senior managers to problem solve within policy." No greeting, no signature, just that sentence. I stared at it longer than I should have. That was the first crack. 3 days later, I was booked to Lisbon. Mission-critical vendor transition. A legacy European partner was handing off infrastructure support to a new consortium, and the overlap window was tight. If anything went wrong, service outages would ripple across 3 regions. My travel was approved. Barely. Economy seat, lowest hotel tier, no flexibility buffer. I didn't complain. Lisbon went smoothly on the surface. Meetings ran long, dinners with vendors stretched past midnight. On the 3rd night, the hotel manager informed me that my reserved room was being reclaimed due to an overbooking issue. He offered an upgrade. Same building, different floor, slightly higher nightly rate. I accepted after confirming with the local vendor rep that the upgrade cost would be covered as part of their hosting agreement. Everything was documented. Emails, receipts, approval chain. I thought nothing of it until the global ops call the following Monday. Karen ran that call like a courtroom. 50 faces in little rectangles, cameras mostly off, senior managers muted unless spoken to. She clicked through slides at a brisk pace, narrating cost savings metrics like she was reading from scripture. Then she paused. Some managers, she said, eyes flicking toward her second monitor, seemed confused about personal accountability when traveling. My stomach dropped. She pulled up a screenshot. My expense report. Specifically, the Lisbon hotel line item. This upgrade, she continued, was technically non-compliant. I unmuted myself. Karen, the vendor approved. She cut me off. Rules don't change just because you're uncomfortable. There was a beat of silence. Then she moved on, just like that. After the call, the consequences rolled in quietly. My reimbursement timeline slipped from 5 days to pending review. Finance flagged my profile. My corporate card limit was reduced. No email, no explanation, just friction. I had become an problem employee. The Jakarta trip was urgent. Our Southeast Asian partner had uncovered a regulatory change that threatened to void an entire service segment. They wanted reassurance, in person. Karen approved the trip herself. That should have worried me. Jakarta hit me like a wall of heat and humidity the moment I stepped outside the airport. My phone buzzed nonstop. Vendors, internal stakeholders, legal. The first 2 days were brutal, but productive. We renegotiated timelines, drafted amendments, stabilized the relationship. On the 3rd evening, I returned to my hotel exhausted, suit jacket slung over my arm, already thinking about sleep. That's when the front desk called me over and slid the terminal back. Authorization revoked. I felt my pulse in my ears. I opened my banking app. Corporate card inactive. Then my email refreshed. Your card has been temporarily suspended pending compliance review. Finance Ops. CC Karen Whitlock. The timestamp read 7:43 p.m. local time. After hours. Emergency protocol violation. I knew that because I'd helped write the policy. I stood there, stranded, while the line behind me shifted impatiently. No emergency contact, no response from HR, no way home. That was the moment survival turned into something else entirely. And that's where I'm going to pause, because what I did next wasn't impulsive. It was precise, and it took everything Karen thought she understood about optimization and turned it into a weapon. I didn't raise my voice at the front desk. That surprised me even. Instead, I asked the receptionist for a printed statement showing the authorization revocation time. She hesitated, policy, privacy, but I smiled, tired and polite, and explained that my company required documentation for incident reports involving payment failures. That phrase mattered. Incident reports. She printed it. 7:41 p.m. 2 minutes earlier than the email, close enough to confirm intent. I thanked her, stepped aside, and sat down on a leather bench in the lobby that smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale cologne. I watched other guests check in, couples, business travelers, people whose companies hadn't just cut them loose halfway around the world. I called Finance Ops, straight to voicemail. I called HR, after hours message. I called Karen. 1 ring, 2, then it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I already knew this wasn't an accident. When you're stranded overseas, your brain does something strange. It narrows, strips away everything non-essential. Revenge wasn't on my mind yet. Logistics were. I booked a room using my personal card, the cheapest one they had left. It still hurt. 3 nights worth of charges that would eat a visible chunk of my savings, but sleeping in the lobby wasn't an option. In the elevator, I opened my notes app and started a list. Not emotional, not dramatic, just facts. 7:41 p.m. authorization revoked. 7:43 p.m. suspension email. No emergency contact provided. No HR response. No alternative lodging arranged. Then I opened the Employee Mobility Handbook PDF on my phone. Page 47. I'd highlighted it years ago during a training session that most people skipped. Under no circumstances may an employee be left without means of return or lodging while on company-mandated travel. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a violation. This was exposure, and Karen had no idea how much. At 2:17 a.m., jet-lagged and wired, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed scrolling through my email archive. I found Karen's original policy rollout email, then her reply to my warning, then the Lisbon expense call-out. I noticed something I'd missed before. The expense code used in the suspension notice. It started with DT04, domestic travel. Jakarta was international. That meant Karen or someone acting on her instruction had used the wrong compliance pathway, one designed for low-risk domestic disputes, not overseas travel where duty of care rules applied. I added it to the list. Then I opened another app, the one that Escalating used to interface with our third-party travel risk insurer. Most employees didn't even know it existed. It was buried 3 menus deep and usually only used during political unrest or natural disasters. I filed a report. Not emotional, clinical. Incident type, financial abandonment. Location, Jakarta, Indonesia. Description, corporate payment authorization revoked during active overseas travel without emergency support or alternative arrangements. Return travel canceled without notice.
I attached the time-stamped email, the front desk printout, the policy clause screenshot. Then I hit submit and went to sleep. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:03 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. "Daniel Mercer?" a calm voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Olivia Chen with Global Risk Assurance. We manage Escalating's international duty of care coverage." I sat up. She continued, "We received an incident report filed overnight. I need to confirm, are you currently without company-provided lodging or means of return?" "I secured lodging personally," I said. "Return travel was canceled." There was a pause. "That shouldn't have happened," she said carefully. "Can you forward any communications authorizing the suspension?" "I already attached them," I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. "Thank you," she said. "Please don't make any additional arrangements yet. We're escalating this." When the call ended, my hands were shaking. Not fear, adrenaline. Because for the first time since Jakarta, I wasn't alone in this. At 9:12 a.m., my inbox pinged. From Karen. "Daniel, your card was suspended due to non-compliant expense patterns currently under review. Please refrain from incurring further charges until finance completes its assessment. Karen." No mention of my location, no concern for safety, no acknowledgement of the canceled return flight. I replied with one sentence. "Karen, please advise how you intend to comply with Section 4.3 of the Employee Mobility Handbook regarding duty of care for active international travel." I CC'd legal and Global Risk Assurance. Then I waited. This was the part most people get wrong when they hear stories like this. They imagine yelling, threats, lawsuits. I did none of that, because the policy Callen ignored didn't just protect me, it transferred liability. Buried deep in the duty of care addendum was a clause most executives never read because it wasn't meant for them. Any executive authorizing the suspension of financial access during active overseas travel assumes personal accountability for resulting risk exposure. Personal, not corporate. Personal, meaning if anything had happened to me, missed medication, unsafe lodging, inability to evacuate, it wouldn't just be Helixon answering questions. It would be Callen. Global Risk Assurance understood that immediately. By noon, they'd triggered an automatic compliance audit. By 3 p.m., legal was involved. By evening, Callen stopped replying to emails entirely. 2 days later, I was flown home. Not economy, not quietly. Corporate arranged it through the insurer. When I landed, my calendar already had a meeting invite. Subject, duty of care review. Attendees, legal, HR, ops leadership. Karen's name was on it. She joined late. Her camera was on. For the first time, she looked small. Legal spoke first. Callen, the attorney said, did you authorize the suspension of Mr. Mercer's corporate card during active international travel? Yes, Callen said, due to compliance. Did you review Section 4.3 of the Mobility Handbook before doing so? Silence. Then, I delegated. Did you authorize it? Legal repeated. Yes. The attorney nodded. Then you assumed personal accountability for the resulting risk exposure. Karen's mouth opened. Closed. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Callen was terminated for cause within 72 hours. Her emails became required reading in compliance training. My expenses were reimbursed with triple damages. HR called it a gesture of goodwill. Legal called it risk mitigation. Then the CEO called. He apologized, offered me a promotion, Director of Global Risk and Travel Compliance, a role they suddenly understood the value of. I accepted, because I earned it. They thought cutting off my card would leave me powerless. They forgot who wrote the policy that protected me. If you've ever had a boss who confused authority with cruelty, who thought rules were weapons instead of safeguards, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if you want more stories where quiet professionals beat loud executives at their own game, subscribe. Because sometimes the most devastating revenge is just knowing the rules better than the person breaking them.